the Transport Secretary has resigned from her cabinet position. Now, the reason that's been given for her resignation is that she had a spent fraud conviction from 2014, from when she had a bunch of items stolen when she was mugged, and that she told the insurance company a phone was stolen from work when it wasn't stolen. So it was a fraud conviction over her reporting a phone as lost when it wasn't, which is now spent. So that is something that it appears in her criminal record, but it doesn't come up in job applications, for example. And this was leaked to the press, the fact that she'd had this previous fraud conviction. And this was part of the national news, became a scandal, and then she's been given the call to resign. Now, you may ask, first of all, why didn't Keir Starmer know about this? And two, how do the press now know about this? Well, to start with, Keir Starmer did know about this. She told Keir Starmer when she was appointed Shadow Transport Secretary about this, and he was fine with it then. He didn't think it was a problem back when she was appointed in 2020. And when you are applying for a cabinet position, when you're being put into a cabinet position in government, they do a check on you to see if you have unspent criminal convictions. But as this was a spent criminal conviction, she didn't have to reveal it when she was being appointed to the cabinet. So the only people who actually really are supposed to know about this are Keir Starmer and people within his sphere, his Politburo, if you will. So it stands to reason that it was leaked to the press by somebody internally within the Labour Party, who we don't know. Really saying off the bat, no one knows who's leaked this. This is all closed information. However, the question to be asked is, why was this leaked and who did the leaking? Or who do we suspect has done the leaking? Well, to start with, there is a very obvious reason why this has been leaked. Actually, two very obvious reasons why this has been leaked. The first one is that she is of the left of the party. The soft left, to be sure. She's not like a socialist. She's still probably social democratic, but she is of the kind of centre-left, soft-left, Ed Miliband wing of the party. She nominated Jeremy Corbyn originally in 2015. And therefore, she is persona non grata. She is in a privileged position that is not afforded to other members of the centre-left, basically, who aren't Ed Miliband, because everybody else in cabinet is a Blairite at this point, apart from now just Ed Miliband, since Lou Haigh has been removed from her post within the cabinet, or has resigned from her post within the cabinet. And the second thing, of course, is that she put her foot in it the other week. So when there was this big investment thing going on, where Keir Starmer was brandishing all this this private investment that he was going to be getting at this little seminar, one of the groups who was going to be investing billions of pounds into the UK are the owners of P&O Ferries. And Lou Haigh made a comment in the media about P&O being a rogue employer who she would not want to use the services of. And you know what? She's absolutely right. P&O were doing fire and rehire, firing workers and then trying to hire migrant labourers on much lower wages, which was terrible. It was an awful thing, and I'm glad that fire and rehire is going to be off the statute book soon enough. I'm glad that fire and rehire is going to be banned soon enough by Labour's oncoming workers' rights legislation and Angela Rayner's New Deal for working people. But even so, if you do this, if you do fire and rehire, you are a rogue employer. You're scum. You're awful. In fact, they did actually break laws at the time anyway. So she was right to call them out. But because she was saying bad things about the corporate goons who Keir Starmer wants to be friendly with, that's no bueno. That's no bueno. That became a whole thing. That became a whole thing a couple of weeks ago, where she had to start having these disparate positions to the Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds in the media. And that means that she was already skating on thin ice. So it looks to me, I'm not saying that I know this, I am just suspecting here that this has been briefed to the press to get rid of her because of what happened over the P&O thing. They already didn't like her from being from the soft left, and they had the perfect excuse to get rid of her, given that she bad-mouthed an investment group who wanted to invest in the UK, who had links to Keir Starmer's political platform. The next question, of course, would be, who done the leaking? Now, my suspicion is that it was very specifically leaked by Morgan McSweeney. Again, I do not know that he specifically did this. It is just a suspicion. It is just me having a hunch that it's Morgan McSweeney. Who is Morgan McSweeney, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Morgan McSweeney is currently Keir Starmer's chief of staff, but they go way back. These people go way back with each other. So Morgan McSweeney was previously the head of the think tank Labour Together, which during the Corbyn era was specifically there to keep the right wing of the Labour Party within the party rather than splitting off and forming like Change UK and stuff like that. And what they did was, in the background, they were corralling MPs, corralling people in the background and donors and things like that, to be able to put together a post-Corbyn plan. So they put a plan together for how they could usurp the Labour Party if Corbyn won another election. In fact, they specifically said to Anushka Astana, who had kind of catalogued the history of Labour together from behind the scenes, without telling anybody, of course, because our mainstream media are completely servile to people who have links to power, and they were worried about there being a Labour government under Jeremy Corbyn. And so they, of course, were chicaning in the background to ensure that that didn't happen by making friends with the press to leak stories that were unfavourable to the Labour leadership at the time. And they took lots of money from hedge funds and from investment bankers and from private equity people. And that's how they funded their operation in the background. There was this kind of this shadow part of the Labour Party to try and usurp the left wing of the party if Labour lost the election, which they did in 2019. And he approached Keir Starmer in 2017 and said, we think that you are going to be a good Prime Minister. We think you would be the right person to be Prime Minister. So the reason why we have Keir Starmer as Prime Minister at the moment is because he was part of the Labour Together shadow faction in the background. So Morgan McSweeney, being very close to Keir Starmer, who left Labour Together to become his Chief of Staff a couple of years ago now, replaced by Josh Simons, who was then replaced by Jonathan Ashworth once he lost his seat at Leicester South. He is the man with all of the power. Morgan McSweeney is the man in the background who has all of the power. He is the one running the Starmer Politburo. And he hates the left. He doesn't just hate the left, he wants them expunged from politics. It's why there's been such a purge of MPs, of members in the party. That's all been kind of ring-led by the McSweeney faction of the Labour Party. So someone like Lou Haigh, who might damage their relationships with businesses by looking a little bit too left-wing, it's not good enough for them. Of course, though, I'd like to say, whilst we're here, I don't think that accidentally or deliberately, we don't know, reporting a phone as being stolen when it wasn't, to be able to, when you're claiming on the insurance, I don't think this is an offence that warrants you not being a cabinet minister. First of all, I couldn't give a shit if people defraud insurance companies. Of course, it's wrong and bad and you shouldn't do it, but I don't really care if they do it. Insurance companies are monsters. And second of all, it's so minor. It is so minor. And yet, you know that donations to Labour Together I mentioned before? £700,000 of donations was made to Labour Together that was never declared. It was never declared to the Electoral Commission, and they reprimanded Labour Together because of it, and Morgan McSweeney was the director at the time. Does this brazen flouting of the rules of the Electoral Commission warrant any scrutiny? No. One MP that the right-wing Labour Party doesn't really like because she's slightly left-wing. Oh, it's a national scandal now because she has a spent conviction from 10 years ago. Now, do I have any sympathy with Lou Haigh? I have absolutely none. I have absolutely none. She is lying down with the dogs right now, and she's getting mad that she's covered in fleas. And I'm like, well, this is what you wanted, right? She backed Owen Smith in 2016 and said she was wrong to support Jeremy Corbyn. And quite frankly, if you're going to stab your ideological bedfellows in the back, you can't really complain. You get stung in the back now, can you? You absolutely cannot complain when Caesar McSweeney's thumb points down. You can't complain at all, right? You decided to try and make friends with these people, and since the fact that they've managed to expunge the party of all the left-wingers now, they can happily fight amongst each other. Like, this isn't adult governance. This is people who are obsessed with power for power's sake, getting factional with each other when there's no one to get factional on the left over. It's not adults in the room. This is not sensible grown-up governance. This is exactly the same background shit you have with the ERG and the Conservative Party. Although, do you think Liberals will look at people like Morgan McSweeney? Do you think they'll look at the Dominic Cummings of the Labour Party and hold them under the same scrutiny? Well, of course they won't. They all have Alistair Campbell, who did the same shit back in the 2000s. But he's got a podcast with Rory Stewart, right? Well, forget about all of the fucking war crimes that Labour committed in Iraq that he is partly responsible for. No, they'll never hold Morgan McSweeney to the same scrutiny that they would Dominic Cummings, because he's on a good team, despite the fact that his chicanery is just as monstrous, right? The people at the top of the Labour Party are absolutely rancid. Totally rancid. And we've seen this in terms of the way they set policy, the way they talk in the press, the constant briefing. Literally, I am firmly of the belief that Sue Gray was removed from the Starmer Politburo specifically because she told people like Morgan McSweeney to stop briefing against each other, having this really kind of parasitic relationship with the press. And of course, the press are hugely to blame here as well. I have a seething resentment for the press in this country, who don't act like a fourth estate, they act like a fifth column. They knew about Morgan McSweeney. He was having underground lunches with these people explaining the Labour Together plans in 2018 with people like Anushka Astana. Did they think it was not a reason to mention that at all at the time? No, because it wasn't in their interests to do so. keeping the public in the dark because it was in their interests to be close to power. So they didn't mention it at all, did they? No, they didn't at all. So they are just as servile as the people in the rest of the media as well. And what's really frustrating about all of this is, despite my contempt for people of the soft left who try and make friends with the Labour right if they contain them, who then get bitten on the way down, despite my contempt for these people, after all this, I still quite like Lou Haigh. I think she had good policy. I thought she cared about fixing transport in this country. I thought she cared, and you can see that she cares about workers when she says the stuff that she said about P&O. She's clearly somebody who's gotten into politics because she actually genuinely wants to see positive change. And you know what? I can respect that. She led really good changes to transport policy, the rail renationalisation bill that we just got through, and wanting to have buses owned by local authorities, real kind of spearhead for active transport and stuff like that. But all of the foibles I think she's been a good cabinet minister. I think she's been absolutely fine. But the fact that she now is persona non grata for being slightly too left-wing, and because the factional dickheads at the top of the Starmer Politburo, at the top of the Labour Party, who really are quite frankly shadow prime ministers at this point. Keir Starmer didn't want to be prime minister. He didn't want to have the power. He was just approached by these people and thrown into the spot. We are actually being ruled by McSweeney and the Starmer Politburo, with Keir Starmer just being an empty suit, relaying their opinions that he has been given to him by them. These are the people really running the country at this point. And because they've decided they don't like Lou Haigh, we now do not have that cabinet minister in that position. And instead, we've just got another Blairite, Heidi Alexander, thrust into place instead. And I wonder what legislation that we otherwise were going to get that we now won't get because of this ridiculous factional infighting. I'm sorry, I just don't know how anybody can look at the Labour Party, the dysfunctional mess that is the Labour Party in 2024, and think this is a party worth supporting or voting for. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Other than the kind of level zero answer of they're the only opposition to the Tories, so we have to make do. There's no argument for this. There's no argument for trying to say that, we were ending the chaos of the last Conservative government. All these people who care about vibes rather than policy. All these people who only care about vibes. They refuse to acknowledge the terrible vibes here. They refuse to criticise the Labour Party for doing exactly what the Conservative government were doing not fucking 6 months ago. Chaos is okay as long as it wears a red rosette. Political chicanery in the background, that's okay as long as it wears a red rosette. Oh, the ends justify the means. Or you have to play the game to win the game. And yet you still criticise the Tories for doing that. And the fact that the people who are really in control of our party are funded by people from private equity, from hedge funds, from banking sectors, right? Investment banking. It shows you who they really serve in terms of policy. The people who actually have control over what policy is set, because Labour together with the people who are essentially vetoing anything remotely left-wing at the National Policy Forum. The policy strategy of the Labour Party is entirely set by these think tanks, specifically Labour Together and the Tony Blair Institute, who have the ear of the Starmer Politburo, and ministers, even, as well as regular MPs on the backbenches who are being whipped to support these things, have no say. Members have no say. And whilst they were absolutely fine, whilst Liberals were absolutely fine to critique Dominic Cummings as being the brains behind Boris Johnson, they do not even bother even looking at what's happening in the background of Labour. They can't even be diligent enough to scrutinise and just assume that it's okay because it's the red team. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And it shows you how absolutely dysfunctional our politics is in this country. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.